Okay, this video we're going to talk about trying to clarify the different Beckart traps, pH traps, and different probe sizes and styles that have been utilized that cause some confusion for a lot of people. So we'll just start historically. We started using a pH trap that had a larger Great Lakes probe that looked a lot like this. It had 1.5 inch thread here and a long body with the electrode at the end. This was made by Great Lakes, and this is actually one I'm holding is by Aquametrics years and years ago. So this probe went into a Spears pH trap that we build with a socket union, or a union here, basically a threaded union, and the probe would thread directly into the end of the union flange, and we had a little nipple, and it would go down into the stream down there. The electrode would get down into the stream. This is how this actual one in this picture here shows a more modern Hawk probe. The Hawk probes, when they stopped or discontinued making that body with the 1.5 inch, we had to start selling 1 inch probes, and we had on a little adapter. That's the 762-006-051 adapter that screws onto the end. You must thread the wire through it, and it threads onto the 1 inch side, leaving an 1.5 inch thread so that it can go into the union that previously used this older body. So they were able to drop in and replace it. Then some of the customers mistakenly put the adapter on the wrong side. So if you get it on the wrong side, you have that adapter right there at the opposite end of the probe down here. Then the electrode is not going to be in the waste stream, and you're going to have problems. You're not going to get good readouts at all. So the wastewater circulates through the bottom of the trap, and this will get air and sludge packed up in top in here, and you'll get no good reading at all. So you need to take the threaded adapter off the end of it and move it to this end, so that and get rid of whatever adapter they've put in here, and they can go right into the threaded union that'll get the pH probe down into the waste stream, so you get a proper reading. Again, it looks like this when the adapter is threaded in properly to the union, so then the union coupling can come off, and the probe down at the end can basically get a good reading at the end of it. So a lot of our probes have changed over the years. That's what the adapter is for. When you have a 1 inch probe and you have an old 1.5 inch trap like you just saw with the unions. We've since had to start using what they call convertible type probes, which have been around for a long time. This is a 30-year-old document from Great Lakes. From 1992 it was printed. There's a union trap right there. So they offered the union trap. We just built our own with a Spears union. The union trap device is able to get this style larger body probe, 1.5 inch convertible type probe, which they are still made by most companies, down into the stream of water. So if we see that union trap on a trap, it looks like this. Here's the union. It's got a threaded T on both sides, and it has a bushing in there with O-rings that seal, 1.5 inch threads in here with a widened out area for the probe to be able to thread into it. And it's got many custom machine parts, and actually this is all lathe turned out of solid stock. So it's quite a lot of machining to create one of these. But like I said, this one's made by Aquametrics, but they've been around for quite some time. Great Lakes had them, and I'm sure Hawk may still make them as well. But the union trap is how we build a union trap. I like to put a drain on the bottom of the valve, so that when you isolate this valve and you take a probe out of the water, the way this union trap works is you unscrew that and pull the probe out, it can cause a lot of buildup pressure because you're extracting a probe that's submerged in water and there's no air to get in to displace the probe that's coming out of the liquid. Since this trap is made to keep it wet and keep it, no matter what you do, you shut off both of these, this ends up being flooded because the pipes extend up farther and there's liquid there, so all the air goes out and you basically have a completely flooded area there, and they don't want to unscrew. If you notice, there's the probe that sits down into the water. You have to use a channel lock on this very small area to actually screw this on with pipe dope. And if I'm using Aquametrics probes, I actually use RTV silicone instead of pipe dope because the body, their mold is very old, and so the threads are not very accurate, and they don't really seal. Even with pipe dope, they leak a lot. So I ended up just putting RTV silicone on, and when you take it out, it beads up and it just crumbles and comes apart, so you don't get a leak on those probes. If you're using a SensorX probe, they have a much newer mold, and those are much sharper threads. They're straight threads, so they kind of bottom out. They don't really have much taper. So you can try pipe dope, and tape, it just doesn't ever work. I just prefer just to put the RTV silicone on and turn this on carefully to the bottom, and it stops the leak. But as you can see, those O-rings in there, they basically seal until air can get in here. So I like to have, here's another body. This is if you wanted to use that same union trap for 1 inch. They offer this bushing for 1 inch as well. Here's a problem. What happens when people don't have a drain on the bottom? They close the valves, it's completely flooded. They start torquing this nut with a large pipe wrench or something to try to pull it out of the water. And because air can't get in, water doesn't compress or expand, it just creates more and more pressure until it just pulls apart the plastic piece. That's where, they destroyed the part, because you can't just this should be almost finger tight. You should be able to loosen this up and take this out. If it starts to tighten up as soon as you start turning it, that's because it's trying to pull this out of water and air isn't able to get in, and then it basically becomes the problem that people wind up having. Here's a trap. What I add is so when they isolate it to pull it out of, I just open up a drain valve, put a bucket or something underneath it. Water can drain out, air can get in, and then it becomes very easy to open up the union nut and take it out. So then air is able to come in as it comes out. It's basically just don't forget to shut that before you put it back in operation, or you have water squirting out of there. Sometimes a pail underneath there is all you need to fix that. So I usually just tap the bottom with a 1/4 inch, 7/16, I believe is the drill bit size for a 1/4 inch 20 NPT pipe tap. Put a close pipe nipple in there, and a 1/4 inch ball valve is all it needs, and that you can create a drain on the bottom of that valve. Again, there's one of the other nuts. This was a 1 inch one, but then there's like there's two O-rings there. It usually gets a little bit of grease there, so that it can thread on. So again, here's our original setup with just a standard 1.5 inch union and a nipple and a T. This is all glued. The newer setups are with the newer trap again. So to reiterate, this is an old Hawk probe that's 1 inch body. You would need an adapter to increase the size to 1.5 inch, and that's only if you have the older style traps. That 762006051, it can be reused and take it off the old probe. You don't really have to keep purchasing the adapter. It's if you don't have an adapter, all it does is give you 1 inch threads on the inside, 1.5 inch on the outside. And that's just so that we could basically simulate what the old probe body had been doing with the threading up here. It matched up here versus the length of our older traps. Now the new traps, those are not going to fit in here. This trap threaded in here. These 1 inch probes are too long. No matter what you seem to want to do, even if you put this down at the end, you probably are going to be too far out. So the Union trap is made for either Aquametrics or SensorX probes that have this crayon-shaped or octagon-shaped body and threading on both sides, but we're threading it on the end. So we have different type probes. We have two different main versions of probes. Direct connect to PLC versus with 2 or 4 wire, and different part numbers. So our 760-106-051 is a 2-wire to PLC with an 1.5-inch body and an Aquametrics. A 760-116-051 is a 1-inch probe direct to PLC. All of these probes here are direct to a PLC. So if you don't have an analyzer on the panel. And then there is the same probe from Aquametrics, 760-206-051, that has 4 wires. One pair of wires is for the pH signal, and one's for the temperature signal. Very common. It's an 1.5-inch body, and it's an Aquametrics probe. Then we have a SensorX 760-406-051. That probe is also 1.5-inch body, direct connect with 2 wires to a PLC. Then we have connected to analyzers with 6 wires. We have 3 different ones. We have one that's the 760-006-028. That's made by Aquametrics. That's an 1.5-inch body. A 760-006-151. That's a 1-inch probe. That's the very common probe that we use a lot. 760-006-151. That's this blue probe right here. It has 5 or 6 wires, 1-inch body. It goes to an analyzer. All of these go to an analyzer. Like this first one is our convertible, used a lot of times in the continuous systems. It's 1.5 inch, 6 wires, goes to a meter. And the 760-406-151, which is an equivalent of the top one, but just a different brand. It's a SensorX 1.5-inch body with the 6 wires.